We do have now Coach Jeff Brink popping in. We'll take a pause right there, but that is our boys' side of the Baird brothers. Let's pop him in. As Coach, how we doing today?
Doing great. How are you?
Oh, doing real well. Coach, I'm going to just shut my mouth because the Lord knows the fans know I've been talking plenty up to this point, but you had that big triple overtime game. What is the feeling of you? What is the feeling of the players? What is the feeling of the entire community right now?
I mean, it's a huge win for us. Obviously, you would hope a game doesn't have to go into 3 overtimes. I know last year the kids had a thrilling 5 overtime game with Poland, and those extended games are obviously rough physically. And for some of our kids, with Alex and Jake Joyce fouling out, we had extended minutes for Adam Wary and Bo Brungard. I mean, they played the full game, so they're looking at 44 minutes for each of those players. So it was a long night, but exciting. I think for the fans. Also, it's always, being a big grudge match game, big rival game. Anytime you play South Range, it's a big game, even though they're not in our league anymore. As we grew up, when I coached here before, that was always a big game. That was the big game. And in football, it was a huge game this year. And I think for a lot of our guys that, is potentially the last time they may play South Range, you want to make sure you go out on a positive note. And it was definitely a dogfight.
Speaking of the football and just the game that they had to play in the football season, do you think that loss helped propel them? And was it something that you guys used, or did they use it in practices as kind of fuel to the fire going into this one?
It's hard to say because individually, I mean, every player approaches things differently. But I think it's something we just approached it from the area of you're playing South Range. Everybody knows what's at stake. Everybody knows how important the game is. And I think that I tried to sell our kids on it could be the last time you play them. And when you have kids that you've grown up playing against for the last 5, 6, 7 years, travel basketball, baseball, football, you want to make sure if that's the last game you play that you send a message and you come out on the positive end. And I think in football, obviously it was bittersweet. I mean, that was a tough loss. It's a great South Range team. I give them a lot of credit. I mean, that was a fantastic team. They had a great season. And it was a tough loss for our guys. But I thought Coach Guerrero did a great job in getting our guys week to week to do their job and be very businesslike and progress through the season. And we're kind of taking that approach every game by game, get better game to game, get better day to day. It's all part of the process.
Obviously, too, we know looking at this, we talked about how you were going to be without your players for a little bit because of the success of the football team. And when you have success in athletes, that's going to happen. But just talking about it, you guys are still doing just fine, it seems like, in the basketball realm. So what do you attribute the early season success to, and what's making this motor run so well so early on?
Well, I think definitely for the early season, you look to your seniors to carry you, to show the leadership. And we have a plethora of seniors that have extensive experience. I mean, Adam Wary was an all-state player last year, and Alex and Bo both were tremendous, and Jake had a great football season, stepped right in. So the 4 seniors have been the key to kind of keeping the ship afloat. Right now, we're still in the learning process. You have kids that really have just been with me for a few weeks. You're just getting to know tendencies. We don't even have full packages in. You're working day to day to try to get things in. So again, it's part of the journey, just getting to know players, getting to get things in. But I think the seniors and having some playmakers has definitely been a plus to be able to carry us here early in the season, because that transition is often tough. I will say, going back to years ago when my previous tenure at Springfield, I had guys like Isaac Smolko and Jimmy Schuler, and a lot of those kids had played with me from 8th, 9th grade. I started taking those kids to travel tournaments back when they were in junior high, played JVs with me. So by the time they were seniors, not having a preseason didn't really affect them because they had been with me for year after year after year, systems in place. For these players, it's a totally different scenario. Not only did they miss this preseason, if you look at their careers, for like Bo and the football players and Jake Joyce, some of these guys, and even our younger kids, they've never had a preseason. Bo Brungard hasn't had a preseason in 3 seasons. They've never had a preseason. So you're literally coming out of football and playing games. And you saw Ursuline had to do that, and obviously South Range had some kids doing that. And it's a tough scenario to be in, but I think it obviously makes it more difficult when you have a transition with a new coach, a new system. And that's part of the process that we're in right now, is just trying to get better day to day, get in the lab every day, work on the things that we need to do to correct and try to progress forward.
Couple more questions for you real quick, Coach. And just looking at this, we talk about it with all coaches, and a lot of them will tell us that basketball season is essentially split up into 3 parts: before and after Christmas break, and of course the tournament time. But the interesting dynamic is based on how athletes finish in their respective sports on both girls or boys sides, that before Christmas break, games can look like you have 5 on the schedule, you could have 9 to 10 on the schedule.
Right.
But for you guys, it's often a more heavily back end of the schedule more than the front end. So looking at this and going into after Christmas break, what are those improvements and adjustments that you want to see made in this team to continue to get better? And where do you think the ceiling is at right now for this team?
Well, I think, the ceiling is very high. Expectations are high. And I think anytime you're at Springfield in athletics, expectations are always high. That kind of goes with the territory. There's a certain degree of pressure that comes with that, but it's also what makes coaching at Springfield special. As a kid that grew up here, watching the kids, when I grew up, kids like Chuck Sinsel and Scott Shane and Jimmy Trafficant, and then you get into the players that I played with, like Eddie Alford, who was a Division I college player and had a great career. Then the kids I coached when I was coaching with Coach Del Torrio, you have a certain appreciation for what it means to the community. The people in Tiger Nation live and die high school sports. I mean, it's something when you go to the local grocery store, that's what they're going to talk about. And, again, expectations are very high. So for us as a program, we got to look at it and say, how do we get better day to day? I think fundamentally, there's a lot of philosophical things that we have to just teach and preach and drill up. Now, we're in the process of teaching some of those things. But I always go back to this. The attention to detail is what separates the good teams from the great teams. You're going to have good athletic teams. You're going to have some teams that can play. But the attention to detail and how you approach things in terms of, are you willing to sacrifice to do the little things that are important that make the difference, those can separate. And those are the things that we have to kind of drill into our kids and get better at. Again, last night we had a lot of turnovers, and you got to give South Range credit. Coach Klusnick did a great job. His kids played hard, and we turned the ball over too much. So we have to get better at certain things in terms of our reads, our understanding of the game, where players are. And a lot of that's just repping it up. We just haven't had a chance to rep up a lot of things that we've got to get in and just get more reps as the season goes. But like you said, as you get into the second half of the year, especially with COVID, you could be looking at potentially 6 games in 9 days. I know at my school last year, we played, I believe, 6 in 10 days. I mean, it's more than the NBA is playing. So you take away the preparation and it makes it even more difficult. So, those are the things every coach is dealing with across the state of Ohio, across our nation. It makes it difficult, and you just have to try to progress the best you can, keep the kids in a positive mindset, and hopefully, again, continue to build.
Final question for you, Coach, and then we'll get you out of here. Just
Sure.
you've talked about him a little bit already. I just want to give you the chance to kind of give us a reason why Adam Wary should get the votes for Baird Brothers Big Dog. And we know that Springfield community always supports Big, but why should the choice be Adam Wary this week?
Well, I mean, if you look at Adam, I mean, he's a tremendous player, and I think he's one of those, because we're a Division III school, a lot of the people across the state of Ohio don't know how good he is. When you look at it and say, there's things he's got to clean up in his game. Yeah, that's every player. There's things we're working on that. When you look at a kid that can flat out take over a game, he's one of the rare players that has that ability to change the course of the game. I thought he did that at Lowville last week. I know you guys covered the game, and he did basically just turned it into another gear and changed the course of the contest. And those kind of players are special. And I told Adam before the season, I said, you're a good player. You came off a great season. You've already proved that you're a very good high school player. In Springfield, what I try to preach is, do you want to be one of the great players? Do you want to be one of the guys that's remembered, that they're still talking about, the Mark Metzkas, the Jimmy Schulers, the Jim Trafficants? You want to be in that class to where you're one of the guys that people are talking about down at the Tigers table 20 years from now. And that's what I kind of go back to and say, that should be your mindset, to not just achieve what you can, but I think the success of the team makes that better for any personal individual accolades. And he's definitely one of those guys, for sure. I mean, and the thing people don't realize too is, you think he's a big time scorer, because he could score 20 to 30 every night. The bottom line is, though, he's also a guy that's fine. He had a couple games where he scored 4 and he could care less. He's like, no, I'm fine. We got guys open. I'll throw him the ball. He'll come out 8-9 assists instead of the 22 points. And hey, I had a great game. That's fine. And that's the kind of guys we got. And to be honest, I feel very fortunate to have very unselfish players, with Alex, Jake, and Bo, and then even Sean Guerrero, Shondell Gardner, Brandon Price played a lot of minutes for us. we have a great group of guys that are right now invested into each other. And I think for teams to take that next step and for us hopefully to progress as the season goes, we got to get better. Bottom line, we got to get better. But I think the bottom line is they care about each other. And when you love each other and you grow up together, there's a special bond and there's a little bit of caring for each other. The relationships make a difference. And hopefully that'll help carry us as we get into the second half of the season.
We're certainly excited to see the second half of the season and support those Springfield Tigers the rest of the way, as I'm sure we'll be talking to you and a bunch of your boys again real soon, Coach. Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it. Have a great day.